Hi there, my name is Charles Ray Dawson. I'm the Associate Broker Residential Sales Manager at ProStar Realty. This is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, episode 288, and I hope you're having a good day. That teaser as we came in was a metronome beating at 92 beats per minute. You might think to yourself, why? Why is he starting out the podcast with a metronome at 92 beats per minute? And because apparently, and this I got this off the internet, so you know it's true. People who speak at 92 beats per minute are listened to and paid attention to more than people who speak faster or slower. I'm not sure if that's true. So I'm like, okay, how about we start at a metronome and let it go and see if I can. And I can even tell right now I'm speaking a little bit slower than normal. I'm not sure if that's the metronome or me thinking about it or whatever, but I'm pretty sure by the end of this, once I start getting spun up again, I'm going to start sounding like Ben Shapiro on crack. So the name of this episode is Problem Solving because, I was listening to last week's podcast. I was trying to find a person texted me, one of my viewers, and apparently I had said something about fake jobs. And so I was listening to that podcast, trying to figure out where in context of last week's podcast did I use the term fake jobs. And I listened to the entire 48-minute or so podcast, and I realized I never say it once. So what was happening is my listener, my viewer, was obviously trying to play catch up and was listening to a previous episode where apparently I said fake jobs. All right, so you're busted. The really embarrassing thing for her is that she's going to see this thing and realize, oh crap, that he dropped this video 2 weeks ago and now I'm busted twice. So anyways, problem solving. All right, last week we covered the whole issue about how to fix things, and in the interim, well, that saga goes on, the game of posts. But I got a call from one of my agents, all right? And it was Friday, so it was the day after we dropped the episode. And he's got a problem, all right? Let's go into problem-solving mode. I use the term work the problem. All right, let's work the problem, okay? I find a lot of times people, when they encounter a problem, want to freak out about the problem. They run around, when in doubt, scream and shout, run about. And how did this problem happen? Whose fault is this problem? This, that, and the other thing. How is this problem going to impact my immediate plans for the future, goals, dreams, hopes, aspirations? How does this reflect on me? Does this, and so on and freaking so forth. So there's a personality test out there called the Big 5 personality test. And I took it because I love personality tests. And most of them are just complete bullshit. But this one's used by enough psychiatrists and psychologists out there that this is the one the HR department should be using, but they won't because they all score very poorly on it. All right, so yeah, we looked into that, but we really decided we'd rather do this Beerson Boggs Miggs or whatever podcast, instead. I just got a flash saying that we lost the internet here to the office. Cool. But since I'm not using the internet to record this, crap. Okay, hold on. My adulting just kicked. Okay, really good example. I just got flashed by my phone that the office internet just dropped. I look down here. Sure enough, the internet had dropped. And so when in that case, hey, we got a problem. The internet's down, right? We need to diagnose and start working the problem. So the personality test that I was taking, you know what? I'm going to do something really funny today. And that is I'm going to put my phone in the drawer. That way when it flashes, I can just completely freaking ignore it. All right. So I took this personality test and this and that and other thing, and I looked at it. And one of the personalities, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, compassion. Okay, 66, right? I am more compassionate than 66% of the people out of a room of 100. But the other one, okay, and I can't remember what it is, but it was something like politeness, right? 0. I am the least polite individual in the room. And I'm like, how can that be? Right? It really spun me out there for a bit because I don't think that I'm that much of an asshole. Right? But I have the ability to become an asshole really quick. So I can go from 0 to your mama, in an eye blink. And I realized later on that that's because when I go into problem solving mode, I don't care about your feelings. All right. I'm working the problem right now, and it's a strength and a weakness. All right. The strength is when everybody's going in a scream, shout, run about. All right. I get hyper focused on resolving the issue. All right. I don't know if I'm bitching or bragging on this one, because it really is a pain in the ass, okay? I have to sit there and freaking struggle when I'm looking at this blabbering idiot, all right, going, that has nothing to do with solving the problems, and I don't care about how this makes you feel, all right? So my client, one of my agents calls me up, all right, and they're having a problem, okay? And I'm like, what's the problem? And I suddenly start hearing about this entire freaking 6-month ordeal of dealing with this particular client, how they've been mean to him and this and that and the other thing. I'm like, I don't care. What's the problem? All right. And the problem is this lady decided to wander into the house the night before closing, the night she gets her checks, the night the keys go over to the buyer, and the night she is no longer the owner of that property. And after the buyer's walkthrough to make sure that everything's there is there, and she took the Tesla battery charger. Those little Tesla battery things that you put in your garage that charges up your Tesla car? She took it. She can't take it. But it's her property. It's hers. That's her entire statement. It's mine. It's like, no, it's not. You signed a contract saying you were selling that. Well, I was never going to sell that. But you said you would. Well, that should have been da-da-da-da-da. You did not tell anybody that you were taking that. It was discovered by accident that you just decided to go in there and take it. So whenever somebody's calling up with, I'm like, first thing which side are we on? Are we on the buyer side or the seller side? All right, because if I'm on the buyer side, ooh, wow, yeah. We buy a house and all of a sudden there's something that's supposed to be there, it's not there. Yeah, we go way freaking nuclear. All right, because that buyer had signed 3 different pieces of paper, right, attesting that she understood what a fixture was, and that if something is plugged into a wall, and not just plugged, wired into the electrical system. It's not like you just take it and you plug it into the wall. You actually have to wire this one into the electrical panel. And you sent, hopefully, a licensed professional out there, not just to disconnect it from the electrical panel, but actually patch the drywall. All right? That's a fixture all day long. That is every one of my clients knows that that's a fixture because we've done the whole fixture song and dance routine with them. All right. But in talking to my agent, I'm like, all right, did you call her up and tell her to put it back? Yeah, she's not going to put it back. What do I don't know what to do. Well, number one, you stop the closing. You call up, and then we go into problem solving mode. All right. What's the issue? That's not there. It needs to be there. What's going to happen if that's not there when the buyer takes the property? Well, that buyer has the ability to basically sue everybody. All right. She can sue her agent, right? Her agent's broker, the seller's broker, the seller's agent. Everybody catches a lawsuit because there was a contractual obligation to deliver that house with a Tesla battery charger, and that individual failed, and somebody's at fault. And we'll figure out who's at fault in court. Right? Attorneys love that. Okay, attorneys love that. It is one of my biggest pet peeves when I'm sitting there listening to a podcast between two attorneys. All right, and then we just straighten it out in the courts. Ka-ching! You know, because they love straightening it out in the courts because they charge $150 an hour. All right, they would love every single problem in the world to suddenly have to go to a court, so you have to hire Stephen the Wonder Lawyer to defend you in court for something that a real estate agent can take care of in 30 minutes. And this is how we're going to take care of this in 30 minutes, boys and girls. So pull out your notepad, right? Number one, we call escrow. Stop. What do you mean stop? I said stop. We're not recording today. I don't even think you should disperse funds at this point. You are on a hold until we get this resolved. Right? Now I just freaked a whole bunch of people out. Number two, I call the agent on the other side. Hey, agent, we got drama. Now your other agent's going to be your ally, your best friend in this situation. Okay? So if we look at this problem-solving scenario of what's the first thing we do? We stop potentially making it worse. We called escrow. We said stop. Okay, we are headed towards a cliff, and I'm the only one who's seeing it right now, so we're stopping the car. Right? Two, you're going to get an ally on board. The only other person in this entire scenario who's trained the same way you are, the other real estate agent who also doesn't want to catch a lawsuit. Right? And that agent is going to look out for the best interests of their clients. Right? You need to call them up and go, Bob, we got a problem. My client's stupid. All right, I just found out, and I'm ratting her out, that she decided to walk off with the Tesla battery pack. All right. She thinks it's her property. I'm telling her she needs to put it in there. Do me a favor. Call your client, inform them of what's going on, and quite simply ask, did you really want it? There's times that the buyer goes, oh shit, we were trying to figure out how to get rid of it. We thought we were going to have to sell it on eBay. Awesome. All right. Now, if I'm on the other side and I get that phone call, hey, this is what's going on. Seller did not let anybody know that she really wanted to keep the Tesla battery pack she's already taken. Do you really want that? Did you have a plan for it? Now, if I'm going through the house and I'm on the buyer side, and they're like, oh my God, there's a Tesla battery pack here. This is great. All right, we're getting a Tesla after we buy this house. This is going to save us money by not having to get a new one. Well, that's suddenly a material fact. Right? That made that house more desirable. That impacted what they offered on that house, that they were going to have to spend an extra $500 plus the electrician to wire that thing in. Right? So, hey, now we got to get that resolved. So now we have two things. Right? I'm on the seller side. This is what happened. This is all right. Now this is a divorce, which makes it even more fun because now I got to call the ex-husband and go, yeah, she did it. I understand why you divorced her. Laugh on the other side. This is what she did. That, fill in the blank. Don't talk to her. I'll talk to her. Right? Because you're going to bring in emotions. Right? So we've stopped the car from headed towards a cliff. We're letting everybody know we got a problem. And then I will call that client up directly. And I will clearly and distinctly explain to her what is happening, why it's happening. Okay, and we have the option of this not to close. What would you like to do, ma'am? All right, and that's the resolution. Now, I would like to say in a perfect world, somebody who suddenly realized, oh, wow, I did not realize that. I misunderstood the 3 forms I read. I didn't understand the words that were coming out of your mouth. To be honest with you, I had my phone on. And I was playing Candy Crush when you were talking to me on the phone about what I was signing away, all right, or whatever. All right, I'll put it back. I'll call them and have them put it back right away. And I do apologize to everybody for the situation. All right. Or sometimes, especially in divorce, People will draw a freaking line, go full 100% emotion, 100% emotion, and double down on stupid. And they're not going to do it. And no, this is it. This is what we're going to do. And then the best you can do, all right, is you as an agent to protect yourself, all right? Because now we're doing complete damage control. We identified the problem. We stopped the problem from getting worse. We gathered allies. We informed everybody. And, you know, I should touch on gather allies a little bit. Gathering allies also means getting the people who cannot be any help with this situation isolated and out of the problem chain. All right, work with the people who are actually in a position to fix the problem. Okay, you need to inform everybody, but some people just are not going to bring anything to the table. In fact, they're going to make it worse. You sure as hell aren't going to do a freaking 4-way, 5-way conference call, Zoom call with all parties trying to resolve the issue, because next thing you know, the husband and the ex-wife might start having a fight in the middle of your Zoom call. If you've ever been on a Zoom call where the other two parties are fighting, it is really inconvenient and uncomfortable. All right. So, and then you've identified this is our resolution. You might want to come up with 2 or 3. All right. I do a lot of if-thens or what ifs. All right. I'm going to call her up. I'm going to tell her she has to put it back. What if she doesn't? Well, this is what we can do. All right. I will inform escrow to withhold $500. Okay, actually, I'll inflate it. I'll go to Grok real quick. Or ChatGPT, and say, what is the average cost for installing a Tesla battery, charging wall in my garage in Maricopa? It'll give me a number. I will then send an email to all parties, including escrow, directing the escrow officer to withhold $1,500 from the seller's side and hold it in escrow until we get this resolved. And then we can continue on with the closing. All right. Because that protects the buyer. And if I was on the buyer side, that's what I would suggest. Okay. But sometimes when people are being obstinate, they have to see that you're actually going to do it. Right? No, you're not getting your way. This is adult world. There will be ramifications of your actions, and that ramifications is going to cost you $1,500. You're thinking it's only cost you $750 because your husband's also going to pay for the other $750. But guess what? We're going to hold that $1,500 in escrow until the courts decide where it goes. We're going to release that to the buyer. Okay, and if you think you can get it back, then you can sit there and go, no, I get that back, right? But your husband's going to say, no, you don't get any of that. So long story short, all right, we've identified the problem. We clearly articulate the problem. This is what the problem is. It's not that she's evil. It's not that she's a bitch. Okay, the problem is that battery pack's not there. All right? What happens if you're doing this whole thing, you call the husband up and stuff like that, and he goes, oh, crap, well, I got one. All right, we bought 2. I took one out of there earlier because I actually listened to the documents. I got in there. I'll just go put it in. Oh, by the way, I'm an electrician. That kind of stuff. This is how you work a problem-solving situation. So in real estate, and this works for everything, all right? VFW post, refrigerator's not working, right? And I see so many Americans out there have zero problem-solving skills. And it's getting worse because they're used to just going to ChatGPT. And they don't even know how to write the question right. So they're making things worse because they're asking the wrong question. So this is Ray's concept of problem-solving, right? First, identify the problem. Right, number 1. 2, identify the impacts of this problem. All right. And what I mean by identify the impacts of the problem is like we have a problem and this is everything that it's going to affect. The refrigerator is down. That is a problem. All right. What is this going to affect? This is going to affect the ability for us to safely serve food to the veterans from the state home who are coming in here in 1 hour. All right. What resources do we have? His strength, your brains, my blade, and a Holocaust cloak. All right. Okay, let's work the problem. This is what we got going on. These are our assets that we have in place. All right. And a lot of times you got to really seriously look at, sometimes you might need to change that. Well, there's a problem and you need to isolate the immediate effects of the problem, especially if the problem's ongoing. The kitchen on fire is a problem, right? We don't have time to go through Ray's problem-solving checklist. All right. Now, rule problem number 1 is put the fire out. Boom, fire's out. Okay, problem number 2. To put the fire out, we activated the chemical system in the kitchen under the range hood. And now the problem is there is chemical death all over the kitchen, and it is going to be at least a weekend worth of 4 or 5 people tearing the kitchen down to its basic component parts and wiping down every solid surface and putting it all back. All right. What does that mean? We have a problem. We don't have a kitchen at the post. All right. Why is not having a kitchen at the post a problem? Because we can't serve food. Is serving food at the post a problem? Yes. Why? Because in 1 hour, we have a whole bunch of people from the state home showing up, and they're expecting to get fed. They have literally not had dinner. They're not eating at the state home. They're coming down here to eat, and we got people who are showing up here who need to be fed. How do we resolve this problem? What's the problem? We have people who need to be fed. See how I've done that? I'm backing the problem, right, to the ultimate problem is we have people who need to be fed. How do you feed 20 people at the drop of a hat? You call pizza. Just remember, many kitchen household problems, it's like, and then we call for pizza, right? And then we order pizza. All right? Basic problems resolved. People are fed. Right? That was the job. Feed the crew. Crew's fed. Right? And then we move it on from there. And people get spun up in the minutia of this, that, and the other thing, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and they let their ego get involved in it. All right? And in many cases, you'll suddenly see childhood trauma surfacing out of nowhere. You have a conversation about somebody about, why do you think this is such a stressor to fix these things? Like, well, because my daddy always told me that I was stupid and I didn't know how to do these things. All right, great, childhood trauma. All right, we're going to take that. We're going to unpack that, in therapy, not with your real estate agent. All right, you're going to unpack that with your therapist, but let's work the problem. All right. So going back to problem solving the person who decided to walk out for the Tesla battery pack. What's the problem? She took a fixture, right? Opening up, damaging the buyer. All right. And the seller has damaged the buyer. But the seller has technically not damaged the buyer yet. Why? Because the transaction hasn't closed. And what I mean by the transaction hasn't closed yet, all right, is that it's when the document is recorded, then the buyer is damaged. Asterix, haven't done this in a couple months. Asterix, Ray's not an attorney, all right? But that buyer is not physically damaged until closing, when that contract is not properly performed on. And even then, we have cure notices and stuff before it's a breach of contract. All right? So that doesn't happen until closing. So what we do is we stop it. Right there. Done. Stop. We're not closing. Now, there's a lot of risk on this, and this is not something I tell any random real estate agent out there to do. Right? Because you, by declaring a stop on the whole game, can leave you exposed, because you could be damaging people, because there are a whole bunch of people out there obligated, who have things going on. Maybe they have a check that they post dated, right? And they need that money in the bank today. But by going in there and saying, breaking it down to the bare components, the bare framework. The seller is damaging the buyer. All right, stop. Now, I mean, if it's almost like if they were taken there and they were going to stab them with a knife, and then all of a sudden you hit pause on the video and everything's just stopped. All right, how do we work this situation right now? We just bought ourselves a couple hours. All right, I'll be honest with you. You get to about 4 o'clock, 4:30 or so. Or if you got funds wiring out, you got even less time than that. Okay, but you got yourself a real serious problem. Like when I was talking to that agent, he's calling me up at like 10:30, and I'm like, dude, you got 2 hours to get this resolved. You got 2 hours to get this resolved before funds get wired. Right? And it's not that big a deal. It really isn't in the big scheme of things. All right, but your seller is damaging the buyer, and when that thing records, it's going to happen. All right, so we've broken it down. The basic: seller is damaging the buyer. How are they doing that? They're taking this. Okay, let's get the perception of the other side. Okay, and the other thing is, now that we've stopped, okay, let's check all of our priors. That's why we're calling the other agent up. Your perception of the situation is that your seller is damaging that buyer. Are you correct? Does the buyer perceive that as damage? Call the other agent. All right, we're double checking our premise. Is the refrigerator really not working? Okay, yes, it's not working. There's a big question between is it not working or is it not broke? Class, tell me one way a refrigerator can be in complete 100% operable condition and yet still not be cold. Anybody? Yes, Gladys in the back. It's not plugged in. You're right. Did anybody check to see if the refrigerator was plugged in? As silly as that sounds. All right. My computer's not working. Well, it's not plugged in. How did it get unplugged? Probably. All right. And I've had to sit there and look at somebody and go, cleaning crews here last night. They have vacuums. They could have vacuumed underneath, snagged your cable by accident, pulled it out. And then they look at me and they get upset with me because they feel like an idiot. It's probably my tone. Okay, because like I said, I get that really low freaking nice guy score. All right. And I'm frustrated because I'm only on my first cup of coffee. And next thing you know, I'm coming up here and you just hit me with negative energy because the computer's not on and it's my fault. All right. And I just got my coffee, so I'm obviously just here. I know I wasn't going to show up early on the off chance that your computer was going to be unplugged and you needed somebody to crawl underneath your desk and plug it in. So, true story of that, by the way. So we start working the problem. Okay. What's going on? Okay. Are we sure what our perception of the situation is the correct one? All right. And that's a lesson that I've had to learn the hard way, because I go with what I first think it is. And 30 minutes later, it's like, oh crap. Yeah. Ray never checked to see if it was plugged in. I spent an hour and a half once trying to create a Cat5 patch cord, recutting, rebinding, recrimping, until I finally decided to test the test equipment and found that the test equipment was broken. Yeah. And then start working the problem out from there. And I think a lot of times is there's an old adage that's a problem properly stated is half solved, or something like that. So the reason why I wanted to cover this thing today, and I've just been babbling on for about 30 minutes now, is I'm on the many things that keep me up at night, leading to the fall of Western civilization in the United States of America in general, is because we don't understand problem solving. Right? And a lot of times is that we don't understand problem solving because, one, they don't teach you how to solve problems anymore. They really don't. They propagandize you for their prepackaged solutions. right? And if more people in America knew actually how to solve a problem, right, by identifying what the problem is, by breaking it down to its core root, the problem is the impact. All right, this is, start the question. We have a problem. This is a problem because this. All right. We have a problem. What's the problem? The car's broke. Okay. That's a problem. Why is it a problem? Because you need transportation. All right. If one car is busted and the other car works, right, that's a problem, but that's not a capital P problem. Okay, because you still have transportation. Right? Wow, my car's not starting. I have a problem. Wait a minute. Let's work the situation. Okay, I got to be somewhere. The problem is really I got to be somewhere in 20 minutes. And my car's not starting. Wife, were you planning on doing anything today? Nope, I'm taking your car. Problem resolved. Then you go to where you need to be. That problem's resolved because you got to where you needed to be, and then you can come back and work that inconvenience out at your leisure. Right? So, problem solving. Problem: you're homeless. All right, how do we work on that? Well, we find you housing. We find you shelter. All right, what's the problem with being homeless? The rain falls on your head. It's 120 degrees and you die of heat stroke. All right. So the problem isn't that you're homeless. The problem is that you don't have shelter. And there are shelters here in town. Problem: I get to the shelter and they won't let me do drugs in the shelter. See how that works? All right. What I get concerned with is problem: I don't have a shelter for my family. And every family shelter here in town does not let men in. Solution: your wife and children go into the shelter and you go onto the street. Right? Then you work your problem. You don't have shelter. And then you go down to the men's shelter. All right? Problem: first-time homebuyers are 42 years old, as of the report that came out 6 months ago. Is this really a problem? Well, it is if you're 38 and want to buy a house. It's also a problem if you're a real estate agent. So that gets us to the next things. Thank you for humoring me with my 30 minutes worth of babbling about problem solving. Problem: market's really, really slow right now. Let's start trying to figure out what the solution is to that. Okay, why is that a problem? Why is the market being slow a problem? Because we're a real estate company. We pay our mortgages by getting other people into mortgages packaged in a house. And I sat there and I watched 4 individuals discuss that problem. And I think a lot of them missed what's going on. So let's break that down. Why? All right. Problem: market slow. Is it we don't have enough housing? No, we have enough housing. Are we sure we have enough housing? Yes, we have enough houses. There is enough houses out there. All right. So is not enough housing the problem? Well, there's houses out there. Right? Where are the buyers? We don't have enough buyers. Right? Why don't we have enough buyers? There's a problem. It's not that the market slow, it's that we don't have enough buyers. That's the problem. Why aren't buyers buying? Why are first-time home buyers 42%? Average age of 42. Let's go talk to them. Right? And they come back with houses are too expensive. Problem: houses are too expensive. All right. Why? We covered last week. Wait, it was a week before. We covered a couple weeks ago. It's not that the houses aren't too expensive. It's that the houses that you want to live in, the houses that give you a better life than what you're currently living in the apartment, are too expensive. I also came up with a really four-legged stool of housing affordability. Okay, house prices. All right, I wanted incomes to go up. I wanted house prices to either stay the same or slightly come down. I wanted interest rates to lower. All right, and I wanted insurance and general upkeep, backups, whatnot, maintenance and insurance to also drop. One of those four legs has moved, and I didn't realize it until today. All right. I noticed a couple weeks ago that median price per square foot has pretty much stayed flat over the last 3 years. All right. After that little run up of housing craziness, okay, happened in 21, 22. All right. And once that was all said and done and taken care of, house prices have been flat. People keep waiting for the crash. Oh my God, there's got to be a crash. There's got to be a correction. Guess what? I just found out today we had the correction. Nobody noticed it because it was disguised as inflation. So one of those legs have already corrected. Right? And we're based on something called the purchasing power of money. All right. Because of the inflation, all right, going back, 3 years and prior, okay, including that really big inflationary run that we had during, right after COVID, the purchasing value of the dollar has gone down, right? And if you have a widget and it costs you $1 for that widget, okay, and it stays there as $1 for a widget, and all of a sudden the purchasing power of that dollar is even less, right? It's inflationary. So what we've seen is more people are priced out of a house expecting the price of the house to come down, but the price of the house has already come down because in dollars, because it's tagged in what the price of a dollar is, it's actually worth less, right? A $450,000 house today, right, that has lost value if 3 years ago it was $450,000, because $450,000 would get you a lot more of other things besides houses than today. I hope that makes sense. That's one of those economics kind of routine, and that's an entire freaking video into itself. Go over to the economics guys. All right, go check out Doomberg and Econ 101 and those YouTube channels and stuff like that, or anything with Thomas Sowell. All right, and get yourself educated on that kind of stuff. So we've already had a correction. All right, and according to the Cromford report and stuff like that, we're averaging a 20% reduction over the last 3 years in purchasing power if you took that same amount of money used to buy a house 3 years ago. All right, we've had our correction. It's there. Right, we've already done that leg. Right, we're still looking at the other 3 legs because insurance sure hasn't gone down. All right, air conditioners I used to be able to comfortably quote, yeah, that's going to be a $5,000 to $6,000 fix. I'm now seeing quotes of $14,000. All right, to replace an air conditioner. Ask me how I know. Not me, the Post. So where's the other one? Incomes are going up. All right, incomes are going up in certain fields. If you're a white collar employee, well, not so much, right? All those blue collar guys, wow. Call your son up. Tell him you're not paying for his college anymore until he shows up with a welding cert. Tell him that this summer he's learning how to weld TIG or MIG, or both. That's how you get to last year of your college degree for your whatever thing. So that's coming up too. All right, and interest rates aren't going to change. Interest rates are just not going to change. Quit expecting Daddy Fed to come save us all. Right? We're going to be at 6s to 7s for quite some time. The math is there to make sure that that's always going to have to be. Somebody get me in touch with the president. I'll sit down and explain it to him. All right. You can force the interest rates lower, and you're just going to create more problems. All right. You're trying to solve a problem. What's the problem? It's perceived as affordability of housing. All right. And do we have enough houses? Yeah, we have enough houses. They're not at a price point anybody wants to pay for them. Why? Because what they want in a house is a lot more than 4 walls and a roof. They want comfort, they want safety, they want security, they want a good school district. We can work on all of those things. All right, a lot easier than we can getting someplace to rezoned. All right. Do. Shouting into the darkness. So here's your numbers. Let's go over this, and we'll wrap this thing up. 40 minutes. Wow, I'm getting more and more into these things. All right, these are the numbers for August 12th, 2026. Actives week are 23,413, down 92. New listings are 1,868, down 31, giving us a supply of 98.6. We have 98.6 houses where we should have 100. It's not a supply problem, people. All right, under contracts, we had 2,064 contracts written last week, up 4, and our closings were 1,209, which is always down the week after, not the immediate week after the end of the month, but the week after that. Coming soon to an MLS near you is 524 new listings. Well, like I mentioned, our supply is at 98.6, but our demand is at 79.4, giving us a Cromford report number of 80.5. All right. So, what's the problem? Buyers don't want to buy. All right. And the real, right? Is that a problem? No, we have people out there who want to buy. So we misspoke the problem. All right. We misspoke the problem is that buyers don't want to buy that. They don't want to buy that house. They want a product that does not exist on the market at their price point that they're willing to pay. Right. And what is affecting that product? It's not the 4 walls and the roof. That problem is the houses at the price point that they want to pay are in school districts that suck in high crime neighborhoods. So we can get our crime down by putting criminals in jail. Just try that. It might be fun. Let's put the criminals in jail for 1 year. And let's see what happens to crime during that 1 year all the criminals are in jail. Just theory, all right? Just let's test that out. The other thing is, let's get these school districts straightened out. And honestly, I think the best way to get a school district straightened out is go in there with fire and sword and get rid of a lot of teachers. My personal opinion, that's a completely different video, right? So these are the things that we can work on. So next time you come across that problem, that inconvenience in your life, all right, look at it. Right? Define it first, and then define it again. All right? What's the problem? Why is this the problem? Start breaking it down. And sometimes you'll find the solution is not actually fixing the problem. It's just coming up with another way to get what you wanted, at least in the short term. All right? So, problem. People aren't watching the children and pets around water. Solution? Watch your children and pets around water. Problem. The fire department and police have to go out and pull people out of flooded zones. The solution. Don't drive in anything flooded. Right? Problem. People are incredibly stressed out, having high anxieties, worrying about things that they can have zero impact on and has a very minimal impact on their life. Solution. Work your circles. All right? Problem, you have to work 40 hours a week, 5 days a week. Solution, enjoy your weekend. And I'll talk to you guys later, right? See you guys.